gaffy sticks, Bantha Tracks. It's just, I've never heard of them hitting anything this big before.
It's a positive film. It has heroes and villains, and that it essentially is a fun movie to watch. It's been a long time since people have been able to go to the movies and see a sort of straightforward, wholesome, fun adventure.
Well, it's a fantasy. It's not science fiction so much as it is space fantasy. And it's about people. It's finally about people and not finally about science.
The story, when you actually put it into words, is only so much nonsense to hang a great visual experience onto. It's the stuff that fairy tales are made of.
It's sort of boiling down religion into a very basic concept. The fact that there is some deity or some power or some force that sort of controls our destiny works for good and also works for evil.
Marvellous, healthy innocence. Great pace, wonderful to look at, full of guts, nothing unpleasant. I mean, people go bang bang and people fall over and are dead, but, you know, no horrors. A sort of wonderful freshness about it, kind of like a wonderful fresh air.
It's got whatever you want it to be. It's pure entertainment. It's like a roller coaster ride, and it can be interpreted as long as you enjoy it, which is the intention.
Hello and welcome back to Generation Skywalker for the first, possibly last episode of Bantha Tracking. And what is Bantha Tracking, I hear you ask? Well, we will get to that. But first, I want to introduce my co-host for this episode. It's Jez.
Hello, mate. How are you doing?
Good. Long time no speak, mate. It feels like it's been a couple of months since we've done a show.
It has, yeah, for reasons various. But no, it's good to be on.
No, it's good. Jez, quick questions to start this off to kind of help set the scene. Were you ever a member of any fan clubs when you was a child, or even as a teenager or adult?
I can't to explain why. I would have loved to have. I was aware of it. I had seen it. I had friends who were in it, but no, regrettably and unfortunately, I was not.
That was the Star Wars one, though. But any other fan clubs you were a member of when you was younger?
No,
none at all. You were too cool for school.
Oh, it wasn't being too cool for school. It was probably financially driven. That was probably the reason.
There's a couple over the years I was a member of, and one of them actually I'm still a member of now. So one of them was the Manga Club, which was back in the early 90s, which was kind of the official fan club for manga video in the UK, where there was a boom in the early 90s for kind of action sci-fi anime. And since the mid 90s, I've also been a member of Pearl Jam's 10 Club. So that's one that I'm still a member of today. I was never a member of the Star Wars fan club back in the day, but I have been collecting anything fan club related probably for the last 10 years or so. Jez, have you got anything from the fan club in your collection?
I do have, gathered amongst loads of my sort of paperwork and books and bits and pieces. I do have some. And last time I was away with work, Grant was sending me several as well. So I have got a few amongst my collection, but I've definitely not delved into them as much as this series is going to allow me to delve into them. And it's one of those things, the more you look at it, actually, the more you're like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, Dan. I'm glad you've put this together.
Yeah, so I suppose to give it a little bit of context, I mean, I've mentioned there that you got some, Jez. I've collected them. I've actually got the full run of all 35 issues of Bantha Tracks. And when it was rebranded in 1987 to the Lucasfilm fan club, I've got all of those. And it's well, there's just stacks of letters and correspondence, and it's just an absolute time capsule from back then. You know, there was no internet. There was really, you know, you had the TV, but you're going to get there, the odd advert, you know, maybe the odd interview on radio, magazines and things like that. But this was, you know, the purest source of Star Wars information you could get back in the late 1970s and early 1980s. And all of this stuff is mostly paperwork, and I've got it in binders, and it's, you know, it's put away and don't really get to see it. And I've never really sat down and gone through them. I've had probably like you, Jez, had to flick through the odd one. But I just thought it'd be really good to try and bring these things to life, because there's some interviews in there with, you know, all of the big players: George Lucas, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Irving Kershner, Richard Marquand. You know, he's been, you know, dead for many years, and I can't remember ever seeing him interviewed about Star Wars. But I mean, he's probably referenced in books and things like that. But a dedicated interview to him, maybe at the time when the movie was coming out, but It all just seems really interesting. I mean, even Steven Spielberg gets interviewed in one. I'm guessing that's when one of the Indiana Jones films were coming out. But, all the sequel updates that are in there, so the anticipation building up to the films coming out, and it's kind of such a great record of that time and what was going on. So I've been thinking about how can we bring this to life as an audio format. So I want to do this pilot episode, starting with the first issue of the official Star Wars fan club newsletter, which would eventually become Bantha Tracks, and get into its contents and look at what was being talked about by Star Wars fans during that time. So it's a bit of an experiment. It might work, it might not, but I wanted to give it a shot.
Mate, I think this is great because we are saturated with fake news. We are saturated with social media and stuff on the internet. And, can you believe everything that you read and see and hear? Whereas this was the internet of our generation, I guess, looking at it now. And it's just like people are writing in to ask questions, and then the following publication, they're answering those questions. And you've got stuff straight from the horse's mouth. And so it's forget all those urban legends and stuff. This is what was said at the time. This is what the thinking was. This is what it was in George's mind. And it's just an absolute lovely time capsule of the innocence and the simplicity of the time.
I think it's a source of some stuff as well. It's even mentioned about how many Star Wars films were planned, and people scratch their heads and go, well, where did I read that there was going to be X number of Star Wars films? And I thought he said originally it was this and now it's this. And it feels like a lot of that is in here, which is great to know that people weren't just imagining it or making it up. This is what was being said at the time. Just in terms of the fan club, a tiny bit of history, and if we do more of these, I imagine we'll get more into it. So the fan club was run by a company called Factors, who did that on behalf of Lucasfilm. The president was a guy called Craig Miller. I've heard him interviewed on podcasts several times over the years. He's a really interesting guy, and maybe if we carried these on, maybe an opportunity to bring him on. Issues would be sent quarterly to paying fan club members, and the first 4 issues were just entitled the official Star Wars fan club newsletter, and from issue 5 and onwards it became Bantha Tracks. Another interesting point of note, Jez, and I'd be interested to see if you've cottoned on to this or not, but Star Wars Insider ended this year with issue 237.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
Do you know what the first issue of Star Wars Insider was numbered? It's not number 1. There's a clue.
Okay. Because obviously Insider followed the journey, didn't it, as it went through?
Yeah. So it was effectively issue 1 of the Lucasfilm fan club that came out in 1987 was issue 1 of Insider technically. So when that ended on issue 22, issue 23 was Star Wars Insider, and issue 1 of the Star Wars Lucasfilm fan club was the next issue after 35 of Bantha Tracks when they rebranded. So there's an absolute through line from 1978, from this issue we're about to talk today, all the way through to that final episode of Star Wars Insider, which I think 48 years of Star Wars is just an incredible amount of time and effort that's gone into maintaining that. And that was, I think, George's one of the things he wanted from the start was how do we engage the fans. They were at San Diego Comic-Con in 1976 promoting this, and I've seen some photos of that, and it doesn't look very different from Fordingbridge Town Hall. I mean, obviously San Diego Comic-Con's a lot bigger now, but even then when it was a lot smaller, had the foresight to go there with free posters and t-shirts and all that good stuff and show people what this film was about. And it was always about engaging the fandom, it felt like from the very start.
Yeah, mate. No, it's awesome. I really am looking forward to this. As I was flicking through and just doing a little bit of research for this, and I know we'll come on to it as we get to that episode, but they've got fan mail addresses in there for people's agents, so if you wanted to write to Anthony Daniels, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, David Prowse, Mark Hamill, and there would be spoilers, in 2 releases prior to Empire coming out, they were talking about Lando and they were talking about a character called Yoda and stuff like that. And so that was great. But what I love is this almost not movement, but it appears that there's definitely a very much a family thing about this, and you would look forward to each little release coming out. At the end, when it fast forward to the end, when it said, I'm just reading an editorial, And it just says, with this issue of Bantha Tracks suspends publication. For over 8 years, we've seen the club grow into a worldwide group of enthusiasts from nearly every nation and nearly 250,000 members strong. One of the other things which I went on to read, and this just is, as I said, a snapshot of the time, mate, was, they would set up pen pals, and it would be like, yeah, if you want a pen pal, write to us and we'll put you in contact with a random stranger. And there was even a Star Wars fan club pen pal wedding because, of how they connected people. So it really, really was a sign of the excitement, the innocence and the times. Mate, I think one of the reasons why maybe I wasn't a member was because back in the day, it was definitely a case of money's too tight to mention. Now, it might sound like, what, this is nothing, but it was the Star Wars fan club, as you said, it came out factors in 1978. It cost $2.95 to join the UK branch of the official Star Wars fan club. When it launched in early 1978, you'd then have renewal fees and stuff like that. To put that into context, for the late 70s, weekly pocket money allowance was approximately 50p. Mine was 25p, I remember. So I would get enough for like a Look-In magazine and a 5p mix up. But yeah, so Star Wars Weekly, Marvel cost 10p, and standard sort of Palatoy Star Wars figure at the time may have been around about 99p, 149 or so. So the fact that I was just getting some stuff sent and it was $2.95, maybe that was the reason. I don't know. Maybe it was just too much. I really, really don't know. I know that a friend of mine was in it, but he didn't really talk about it much to me. So I don't think that was the sort of the reason for me not joining it. But yeah, I'm looking at around about $2.95 to join initially.
Nice. Okay, so let's get into the issue then. And to help us do that, we've got our friend Alan Isaacs. We'll see how he gets on this episode. We may pivot and maybe do something a little bit different next time, but we thought we'd give this a shot this time, go a little bit gonzo. And we are going to take a listen to each section from the newsletter, and then after which me and Jez will have a little discussion about it. So Jez, you're all up for this, and make sure we get into it.
Yeah, let's go and listen to Mr. Alan Isaacs.
The newsletter of the official Star Wars Fan Club, Volume 1, Number 1. George Lucas, the man behind Star Wars. George Lucas is among the new generation of young film directors who have loved films all their life. These young directors were brought up on motion pictures and continued their romance with film by attending film schools. They studied theories of filmmaking, explored the technical demands by making their own short films, and endlessly viewed old films to rediscover the visual and narrative elements that made moviegoing a weekly habit. Other members of this new generation include Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, Steven Spielberg, Jaws, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Brian De Palma, Phantom of the Paradise, and Carrie, John Milius, The Wind and the Lion, and Dillinger, and Martin Scorsese, Taxi Driver, and New York, New York. All of these men share the love for films that made George Lucas want to become a director. George Lucas was born on May 14, 1944. The son of a retail merchant, he was raised on a walnut ranch in Modesto, California. As a teenager, his two passions were art and cars. Determined to become a champion race car driver, he worked at rebuilding cars at a foreign car garage and in pit crews at races throughout the country. Following a serious automobile accident a few weeks prior to his high school graduation, he gave up all hope of becoming a race car driver. He attended Modesto Junior College for 2 years, where he majored in social sciences. By chance, he met award-winning cinematographer Haskell Wexler, who encouraged him to study filmmaking and helped pave the way for his admittance to the University of Southern California Film School. While attending the USC Film School, he quickly turned out 8 short films. He subsequently became a teaching assistant for a class training U.S. Navy cameramen. With half of the class assisting him, he made a science fiction short entitled Electronic Labyrinth, THX 11384EB. The film won the 3rd National Student Film Festival in 1967-68 and several other awards. In 1967, he was one of 4 students selected to make short films about the making of Carl Foreman's McKenna's Gold. His short was Foreman's favorite, although it told more about the mysteries of the desert than about Foreman's film. Lucas then won a scholarship to Warner Brothers to observe the making of Finian's Rainbow under the direction of Francis Ford Coppola. While working as Coppola's assistant on The Rain People, he made a 40-minute documentary about the making of the movie, entitled Filmmaker, which has been recognized as one of the best films on filmmaking. George Lucas's first professional feature motion picture, THX 1138, was an expanded version of his prize-winning student film, starring Robert Duvall and Donald Pleasance. It was enthusiastically received by critics when it was first released, and has since become a cult film with a large following. In 1973, he co-wrote with Gloria Katz and Willard Huyck and directed American Graffiti. Upon its release, American Graffiti was hailed as the quintessential movie about American teenage life and rituals. The movie was nominated for 5 Academy Awards and won the Golden Globe Award for Best Motion Picture Comedy, and both the New York Film Critics and the National Society of Film Critics Awards for Best Screenplay. George met his wife, Marcia, when she was hired to assist him on editing a documentary under the supervision of Verna Fields. Marcia Lucas was one of the editors on Star Wars and was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Editing with Verna Fields for American Graffiti. She has also edited Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and Taxi Driver.
So what do we make of that then, Jez? Any nuggets of information in there you weren't already aware of?
Yeah, I think it's great. I love the fact that we need to dig out this guy. What's his name? Let me get to his name in a second. That he met the award-winning cinematographer Haskell Wexler, who encouraged him to study filmmaking and helped pave the way for him. It's just like, get that man a beer. It was, I thought that was one of the biggest things about, you just encouraged him to crack on. Because if you think about, parallel universe, sliding doors or whatever, well, if they would have never have met, we might never have had Star Wars. How about that?
Yeah, it just feels like everything fell into place for him. It's like everything happens for a reason, I suppose. And that's a saying. But I think it's a great place to open, isn't it? You think of a Star Wars newsletter, and we're better place to start than with George. But I don't know whether a 12-year-old kid getting the first issue is going to go, George Lucas, who's he? And then walk away from that thinking, oh wow, I want to be George Lucas now. Do you know what I mean? It is a funny thing, isn't it? That all of the way that certainly the behind the scenes people almost became as big a stars as the people on screen. It's fantastic, and it's great that they kind of, even back then, were highlighting all these other filmmakers, all these the kind of golden generation: Scorsese, Coppola, Spielberg, De Palma. He's getting mentioned in the same breath as those guys. It was a magical time for movies. Well, I don't think there's probably another group of filmmakers with a filmography as great as those guys.
No, I had no idea that he was Francis Ford's assistant.
And he actually turned down directing Apocalypse Now so that he could do Star Wars as well.
Yeah, mate. It was an interesting choice of their first sort of iteration of their first publication. But you got to thank the maker, haven't you?
Local chapters for the official Star Wars fan club. We've received dozens of letters from people who'd like to start their own Star Wars fan club. We've decided to help them. We'll be running listings of all of the local chapters to let you know if there's one in your area. We'll also run write-ups on local chapter activities. We've set up some guidelines for the formation and running of local chapters. If you're interested in forming one, write to Local Chapters, care of Star Wars Fan Club, P.O. Box 1000, Beverly Hills, California, 90213. Star Wars 2. Almost since the day Star Wars was released, rumors about the making and release of Star Wars 2 have been spreading. The ones we've heard announce the film as being in at least 5 different stages of production, give 4 different firm dates for the opening of the film, and other information that bears little or no resemblance to reality. To keep you informed of what's actually happening, we'll be running a semi-regular feature on Star Wars 2. We'll let you know about production and release dates, casting, scripting, and everything else concerned with the making of the sequel. As things stand right now, production on Star Wars 2 should start in early 1979, with the release tentatively scheduled for the first quarter of 1980. Many of the characters, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia Organa, and Han Solo, will be returning, along with R2-D2, C-3PO, Darth Vader, and probably Chewbacca.
Okay, then Star Wars 2. It's really weird it being referred to as Star Wars 2.
Yeah. When I saw the notes, I was like, "Oh, they're talking about Attack of the Clones already." Well, probably Chewbacca. It was like, you're gonna have him, and you're gonna have her, and you're gonna have this, and probably Chewbacca.
But that's weird, though, isn't it? Because you think it would be probably Darth Vader, because he kind of at the end of Star Wars, he kind of spun off into space. You think that's they probably put and probably Vader to almost try and keep the surprise of whether he's. Yeah, I didn't get that. It did make me smile, I must admit. But yeah, I think that for me would be the draw for being a member for this. This is the bit that would be, if they were still making Star Wars films, if they'd have carried on, I think I would have eventually been a member of this, because I would have been the one hungry for news and want to get it before everyone else. I would have been the one. I would have definitely been a member of it, and I think that was the main draw is trying to find out. And if you lived in the UK, remember this came out in January '78. We were only just getting Star Wars around this time came out, so I don't know if there was a time delay between us getting the fan club or not. To be honest with you, I know you could get the first issue in the UK.
Yeah, maybe the reason I wasn't a member is because come say 1982, when I first started getting into Star Wars, I think a lot of this information would have been out. Obviously, there wasn't a bank of sort of Wikipedia or anything like that, but Empire had come out, Return of the Jedi was coming out, and therefore, the books and everything else were hitting the streets. So, and then I think because people had been getting the fan club, it's those people who would be in the playground saying, "Oh yeah, this is happening, or that's happening, or this," and maybe all that information which I was learning in the playground, in the classroom, and this and the other, was because of friends who had the fan club.
Yeah. It's, I mean, you think, right, you're waiting for, it's not like today where we're kind of getting hit with stuff. We've got Mandalorian and Grogu this year, we've got Starfighter next year, we've probably got Ahsoka in between that, we've got the 50th anniversary re-release. Boom, 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 boom. This is a 3-year wait. And these guys are less than a year into it, and they're getting teased about Star Wars too.
Yeah, I mean, you can draw parallels with Celebration and stuff, I guess. For people in the late 70s who, we're here going to Celebration thinking, what are we going to get on Starfighter? What are we going to get on this? Hungry for information, thirsty for information. And you would be getting it in Bantha Tracks. So, it's, as I said, simpler times, but this was their internet.
Yeah, and this was the teaser trailer, because it doesn't actually tell you anything other than probably Chewbacca's going to be in it. So yeah, there will be more to come in future issues.
Star Wars cast and crew find mutual interest. Comic books. Sometimes I really felt illiterate around the set, said Mark Hamill, Star Wars' Luke Skywalker. However, it wasn't discussing Shakespeare with Alec Guinness that made him feel unread. It was discussing comic books with aficionado George Lucas. Mark explained his love for comic books. When I was a kid, we weren't allowed to have them in my family. I was told they were a waste of money, but I still got them somehow. That made them even more exciting to read because they were forbidden, and my friends all had them. My love for them now is a kind of compensation for not being able to buy them then. I have collected a lot of them now, like Silver Surfer. I love Green Lantern, the one with the ring. Superman got on my nerves, but I like Batman because he could get killed, and I got my fix of monsters from Classics Illustrated, which had things like Frankenstein. George Lucas was so passionate about comics as a boy that Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon was the inspiration for Star Wars. His love of the genre has remained so constant that he co-owns a gallery bookstore in New York City, which specializes in space fantasy and science fiction comic strips and comic books. Carrie Fisher is also a devotee of comic books, but her taste runs more to those love comics. Still have them, and I am still fascinated by them. They gave dating tips, which was my favorite section. There was true love, young romance, and just married. They had the most delightfully bizarre stories. I read them twice as soon as I got them. They were always the same and always great. Love, conflict, and then back together again. Romeo and Juliet stuff, but it always worked. There's also another series that I loved, said Carrie. It was underground comic types of things like Slime and Despair. I didn't really read them. I just loved to look at their covers. I think my favorite was The Leather Nun, and you had to be 18 to buy it. Even producer Gary Kurtz was not immune to the comic book mania on the Star Wars set. Sometimes Gary would get an excited little grin, Mark Hamill recalled, and he'd start talking about Scrooge McDuck and the other Carl Barks creations.
Cool. Okay, then, comic books and Star Wars. What do you make of all of that then, Jez? What was your takeaways from that?
I thought that was quite sweet. They really humanise. They're really humanising their actors as well. You know, particularly the bit about Mark Hamill saying, you know, he didn't have loads as a kid, and maybe buying them now is compensation for not being able to buy them back then.
Yeah.
And that was the term he used, I think, compensation for not being able to buy them back then. And I think that's how I felt when I first started getting back into Star Wars collecting. You know, because I didn't have didn't have the AT-AT, didn't have the X-Wing, didn't have the Falcon, didn't have this, that, and the other, didn't have
the fan club, mate. You're gonna have to start collecting all of those now.
Yeah. So maybe me getting into collecting was that sort of compensation, so I can draw parallels with my childhood hero, Luke Skywalker.
My favourite's Carrie Fisher talking about the leather nun. That's amazing. You know, even back then, she's being cheeky and talking about stuff that she probably shouldn't be talking about in a publication that's probably mainly aimed at children. I don't know if you've looked any of the covers up for Leather Nun, but it's worth it.
Right? No, I have not. I will do.
I did think about putting some in the show up. I couldn't find any that were suitable. George Lucas was a big fan of comic books, all the cinema serials, back in the Flash Gordons and all that kind of stuff, and it all melds together. Then obviously the Marvel comic book for Star Wars would have already been out by now, and that would be a focal point for fans as well. So it's kind of tying it all into that geek culture, and San Diego Comic-Con, and having been there, you could really see what they were pushing towards and who they were, the crowd they were trying to draw into this.
Q&A. In each issue of the newsletter, we'll try to answer some of the most often asked questions about Star Wars. If you have any questions that you'd like to have answered, send them to Q&A, care of Star Wars Fan Club, P.O. Box 1000, Beverly Hills, California, 90213. We don't have room to answer all of the questions we receive, but we'll answer as many as we can in these pages. How did you come up with the droids, and were they robots or real people? The two droids, R2-D2 and C-3PO, are among George Lucas's favorite characters. In fact, an earlier version of the script had the two robots as the main characters instead of the humans. The robots were built from designs prepared by Ralph McQuarrie, production illustrator for Star Wars, following detailed discussions with George Lucas. John Steers, special production and mechanical effects supervisor, is the one who made most of the robots work. He and his staff talked with various experts in robotics, the science of robots, prior to building the first one. Besides the dozen robots he built, he also came up with the lightsabers and land vehicles. C-3PO was the only robot not built by Steers. He was designed by Ralph McQuarrie, art director Norman Reynolds, and sculptress Liz Moore. C-3PO's casing was sculpted to fit actor Anthony Daniels, who played C-3PO throughout the movie. Several different versions of R2-D2 appeared in the film. One version had actor Kenny Baker inside. Other versions were built for special functions, including several operated by remote control. Where did George Lucas get the idea for Star Wars, and why did he do it? George Lucas had long been a fan of science fiction and action-adventure books and films. As early as 1971, he wanted to make a space fantasy film. Originally, he wanted to make a Flash Gordon movie, but was unable to obtain the rights to the character. Instead, he researched where Alex Raymond, who had done the Flash Gordon comic strips, had gotten his inspiration. Discovering that Raymond was influenced by the books of Edgar Rice Burroughs, Mr. Lucas read through Burroughs's John Carter of Mars series of books. Further research led to the fact that Burroughs was inspired by a science fantasy called Gulliver on Mars, written by Edwin Arnold and published in 1905. George Lucas made Star Wars because, "I really enjoy the space fantasy genre. It's a lot of fun. I really wanted to make Star Wars in the hope that it will be such a fantastic success everyone will want to copy it. Then I'll get to see space fantasy movies and won't have to do them. I'll finally be able to sit back and enjoy other people's space adventures." For more information on George Lucas and his background, read the article on him elsewhere in this issue. How did you get the lightsabers to work? The problem of getting the lightsabers to work fell upon special production and mechanical effects supervisor John Steers. Production illustrator Ralph McQuarrie gave Steers a sketch of what the lightsabers should look like when in use, and based on that, he made them work. The handles of the lightsabers are 7 inches long and 1 inch in diameter. Loosely attached to a person's belt for carrying, when pulled from the belt and activated, there is a 4-foot-long burst of light and an accompanying hum of power. The blade part of the lightsaber is actually a 4-sided blade attached to a small motor in the handle. The motor is used to quickly rotate the blade. 2 sides of the blade are coated with a highly reflective material similar to the material used on motion picture screens. One of those 2 sides is painted 4 inches higher than the other side. When spinning, this gave the blade its flashing effect. A device was made to lock a light source onto the camera, allowing the camera both to move freely and to be aligned with the light source and the blade's reflection. The film was then taken to a special effects house and rotoscoped, an animation process involving the frame-by-frame drawing of previously photographed live action. This animation process added brightness, flash, and color to the lightsaber blades. That's all for this issue. Next issue, we'll answer more questions about the how and why of Star Wars.
So yeah, early doors, Jez, people were very curious about Star Wars and the questions that they were asking in this maiden voyage of Q&A.
Yeah, I love this. I like the innocence of it, and what's important to some people might not be important to others, but you get the opportunity to write in. They'll look at this and go, yeah, all right, let's answer that questions. Yeah, I think this is great, and it's now making me think, oh, what question would I have asked, knowing what I knew when I first started watching those movies? And I guess it could be tied into your imagination and what flicks you switch. But yeah, these are some great questions.
I think the origins of Star Wars, I think that it's always highlighted, isn't it, when George talks about that stuff, and you know the responses there are pretty good, and you know George saying that he's made Star Wars so people will start making space movies so he doesn't have to make any more. I think that what a great response.
Yeah.
And just the innocence of the droids as well. People saying, well, are they real? Are they robots? Are there's people in them? People just couldn't tell. It was that good even back then that they just weren't sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that was it. You'd see the credits come up and you'd see the names and you'd be like, "What? Hang on a second. How can there be someone in that?" And then it's only then when you start seeing pictures and whatnot, you're like, "Oh, right, yeah, I get it." So yeah, absolute innocence. I loved it. It's a real good sign of the times. But what a great tool to communicate with the fandom, by saying, you have the power. You have the power to ask us questions, and we will answer. And it's very much a sign of the times.
It'd be interesting to see what other questions they get asked. I've not read ahead, guys. I am going to do this as we go. I've got them all, and I've probably flicked through a few of them, but I've not really delved into them as much as I should, which is probably part of the reason that I want to do this. So it'd be interesting to see what else comes up.
Star Wars merchandise and discounts. As you all are probably aware, there is a lot of Star Wars-related merchandise on the market. T-shirts, posters, blankets, masks, towels, toys, and more. And we've received quite a few letters from people wanting to know what is being produced and where it's available. Some future issues of the newsletter will have inserts from companies producing Star Wars merchandise. Not only will these inserts serve to let you know what items are available and where they can be ordered, but some of the companies will provide discounts to members of the official Star Wars fan club. So look to future issues of this newsletter for information and discounts on Star Wars products. The strange item in your membership kit. Some members of the club have written in and asked about the triangular decal included in the membership kit. They want to know the significance of the figure and what he has to do with Star Wars. We included this particular decal, painted by production illustrator Ralph McQuarrie, to lend a sense of history to the club. It's been around just about the longest and has always been used to represent Star Wars. We called up Ralph McQuarrie and asked him about the decal. It was done as a symbol for the film, to go on film cans and letters. George had one for American Graffiti and wanted one for Star Wars. It's been used to identify things as being a part of Star Wars. It can be found on notebooks, file cabinets, and doors. A simplified version of McQuarrie's design can be seen on the stationery used by Star Wars Corporation. "It was done while we were working on costumes," said McQuarrie. "This was how we first pictured Han Solo. It could be a sort of Luke character, but I think it's more like Han. Anyway, later George decided that Han Solo should be a more relaxed character, and his costume was changed. But this decal was designed before the change. Perhaps more than any other piece of artwork, this design has come to mean Star Wars.
So the triangular sticker then, Jez, if you're obviously familiar with this. I've either forgotten it or I'd overlooked that was Han Solo. Did you recognise it as Han Solo?
No. So in my head, that had always been Han Solo. That was, but the Star Wars, you just love it. So iconic, reproduced now in other. People have made copies of it, made stickers of it, made swag of it, made T-shirts of it. But no, in my mind, the way that was very much the sort of initial Macquarie Han Solo character. No, I loved it, and I think it still now to this day absolutely sums up Star Wars. But for people to get that, I think it was a great gift. I think they did so well putting this together.
Yeah, there was a patch of it as well eventually. I don't know if that was already being produced at this point or whether it was something that came later, but there was the triangular patch of that as well. But yeah, I knew the kind of the Macquarie design of, looking through those, but I hadn't realized that wasn't Luke. I just assumed because he had a lightsaber in his hand that was Luke. So I've kind of already learned something new off the back of this that I won't forget now.
And when you look at the rest of it, people asking about, you said about the creation of the droids, but more of the practical effects and the lightsaber effects. The lightsaber would have clearly blown everyone away. So, just the talking about the behind the scenes, about how they're making it, the rotoscoping, these are the things which probably, we know more of now because of the behind the scenes snippets that we get, the making of things and what we learn in Celebration. But I just think, the fascination of the questions, that what was important to fans, to children, to whatever, is a really rich part of this. And long may that continue throughout this series.
Yeah, because that triangular sticker, obviously mentions that it was used throughout the production of the film. It was on doors, it's on, it's put on camera, on film reels, and all the rest of it. And that is just kind of saying, here's a little bit of behind the scenes of what we did on Star Wars that no one else has got. That feels a bit special. But I think with Star Wars, that behind scene element, certainly when George Lucas was in charge, in the 90s when DVD started coming out, you tend to get more behind the scenes stuff, but even today that's kind of gone away. And now Disney owns Star Wars. For Star Wars it's gone away, but I think if George was still making Star Wars today, I still think he'd be pulling back the curtain, saying, look, let me inspire you, come and be a filmmaker, come and be a special effects person. It was great the way that, even from then, and I'm sure that is on purpose, that's in there and they've pushed it this way. But yeah, it was absolutely the seed of more of what was to come.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I wrote when I started looking at this one, it was just, in my opinion, it was groundbreaking. I thought it was great.
The newsletter of the official Star Wars Fan Club, Volume 1, Number 1, published bi-monthly in February, April, June, August, October, and December by Factors Etc. Incorporated of Bear, Delaware. Entire contents copyright 1978, 20th Century Fox Film Corporation. Edited by Craig Miller. Copies available to members of the official Star Wars Fan Club.
Any final thoughts then, Jez, before we wrap this one up?
Mate, my final thoughts are, I think these episodes are going to be sort of fairly short but sweet, but I love them. I no doubt will learn stuff. This is a part of the rich history of Star Wars, which you see at every single echo and this, that and the other, and people just sort of scoot by it or don't really care, or it might only be worth 50p or something like that. But to actually get that, filtered, sort of diluted or straight from the horse's mouth time capsule of direct access to these stars and the thoughts behind it, I think is great, mate. So I really, really thank you for bringing this together. I'm going to enjoy this journey.
I hope so. I hope if you're listening and you've enjoyed this and you want to hear part 2 and onwards, let us know. Go on Facebook, go on Instagram. We'll announce the show. We'll put up posts. Go in there and comment. Tell us whether or not you like this show, whether you like the format, whether you like Alan Isaacs or not, or you'd like us to do something different there. But yeah, just tell us what you think. And if it's working for you, we will do more. But yeah, I don't want to go off and do 35 episodes of this. no one's asking for it. So yeah, tell us if you want more, and we will do more. That is for certain. And hopefully we will be back soon with part 2. But for now, that is it for this show. If you want more Generation Skywalker, head over to your podcast listening app. There's 170 plus episodes now for you to tune in on. And if you want to follow us on socials, Facebook and Instagram is definitely the place to be. And check out our We Are Generation Skywalker Facebook page, where you can talk to hosts and other listeners from the show. But for this episode, it is goodbye from Jez.
See you next time.
And it is goodbye from me. We are Generation Skywalker. All errors, all passions, all Star Wars.